It used to be that we only had two choices, male and female. It's a bit more complicated now. This is a good thing. Our understanding of gender, gender identity, and all of that is significantly better than it used to be. As the public knowledge changes and shifts, naturally our media changes as well. I'm beating around the bush to get to the point of our gay little games aren't just giving us only the men and the women anymore. In Monster Prom, you can choose any of the now redonkulous amount of player characters and give them any pronouns. In A Date with Death, you can customize pretty much everything about yourself, including your appearance and pronouns and how you would like to be described. And Smooch, the latest addition to my fictional husband harem. And in Baldur's Gate 3, you can kiss every single party member, but only one per run. Or two if you're on Astarian's route and enter into a throuple with Halsin. As an unrepentant pansexual, I love this. I love having a choice in the matter and how gender is a non-factor in your romance. No matter who you play as, the only thing that changes about each romance is the pronouns they use for you. Get you a respectful king! However, I talked with some cool people and they provided a perspective that I don't have. I have a friend who prefers only one gender, she's a lesbian, and she said that there's no absolute representation in these games. Certainly you can make your own headcanons and stuff, but that's not proper representation. Sometimes the lack of absolutes can make any potential queerness easy to avoid as well. Simultaneously, while I find the stuff I mentioned before cool, I still also like some sort of outright pansexual representation in my media. I need to know where my kitchenware f***ers are at. On a similar note, I would also like definite trans representation in these games. You can do this through backstories, story beats, or through the choice of actors. I know Zoe in the Monster Prom series is voiced by a non-binary actor, Casey Mongillo? Is it a soft or a hard G? I'm so sorry. And I'd like to see more of this in more games. Zoe is also explicitly a trans woman when she's an NPC. In Monster Prom Vanilla, where she was a secret route, she was an eldritch god who used him pronouns, and now she is a very nerdy, only technically eldritch girl. Compare and contrast this with Fire Emblem. In Fire Emblem Fates, you had one same-gender romantic option per gender of Corrin, and in the Japanese version, your characters would go, but we're both girls/guys, depending on your gender. Although I don't think they did that in the international versions. Furthermore, one of them is the child of another character, which is rather uncomfortable. So like, if I remember correctly, they had like, you could make two of your army members kiss, and then they would get married and have a baby, and then they'd put baby in like the plot relevant place where time goes slightly faster, and baby would grow up to be adult, and you could marry them, which is odd because they were technically born in the current year. Is this a weird subgenre of Born Sexy Yesterday? The Born Sexy Yesterday trope? Were they technically born sexy yesterday? Or last week? God, what the fuck? Yeah, Fire Emblem Fates was a weird game. Lots of, it's okay, we're not blood-related relationships, and some, we're not that related stuff too. The games after that did get gayer and gayer. Some of the characters in Fire Emblem Three Houses are bi, which is decent. Then in Fire Emblem Engage, you can S-support anyone of any gender. And then I made a big fucking spreadsheet of how romantically I interpreted the S-support conversations in Fire Emblem Engaged. Listen, I'm in between jobs now. I could be looking for a job, but I decided to do this with my time instead. I didn't include the DLC because I didn't know it existed until I wrote this. I gathered this info by looking through all of Aaliyah's supports on the Fire Emblem fandom wiki. My standard for how romantically I interpreted the final conversation was whether or not they confessed to having romantic feelings, whether or not the conversation read like a proposal, if it could either be a romantic thing or a friendship thing, I put ambiguous. If they said, we're really good friends, I put no. If they said, I'll serve you forever or similar, I put no. Okay, continuing on. Apparently these endings were changed from the Japanese language release. They were more explicitly romantic. And it's the first game where either gender can romance anyone of any gender. Mad. But now the options for being gay in Fire Emblem Engage is distracting us from the main thesis of this video, so let's consider games from another genre in which sexuality is considerably more important. So I'm going to talk about otome games, which translates to maiden games. These are games made for a presumed straight female audience with a set of attractive men to romance. Especially nowadays, after the genre's early games mostly being go-to-school romance someone, these games tend to have a main plot for the main character to bond over with her chosen male. You tend to have an established character as the protagonist, with the only customizable feature being her name. Sometimes you can choose her surname, but if she has a family member in the story, they tend to only let you have the given name. These characters have a place in the world already, and their backstory can be used for the plot if necessary. Now, I've played a few dating sims in my day, which I'll list here. When I called for a discussion in my server, characters being player sexual, i.e. they're only into the player, and realistic relationships were brought up. I sort of wonder though, can you portray a realistic relationship with these extraordinary premises? How do you toe the line between meeting a player's expectations and realism, while maintaining their interest in the game? If there's a game that can achieve this balance, I'd like to see it. There also doesn't seem to be much in the way of queerness in these games. The only example I found was a game called Gekkaryoran Romance, a Japan-only otome game where one of the player characters is a woman. Unfortunately, the premise involves the love interest blackmailing the protagonist for stupid, contrived reasons. If anyone can find an otome game with a sincere, honest-to-goodness lesbian route that's just as good as the male love interests, please let me know. On a separate note, one through line I can think of with all the otome games I've been into in the last few years is that the heroine tends to be a plucky, determined, but nonetheless kind girl who worms her way into her chosen male's heart with the aforementioned personality traits. They're not always exactly the same character, but they always tend to have similar personalities, but different circumstances. I'm not 100% certain you could call them like a blank slate, but they're easy for the player to presumably imprint themselves onto. Oftentimes, they always seem to forgive the male love interests for a lot of actual felonies and stuff too. I'm looking at you, Amnesia Memories. That yellow bitch traumatized me. I tend to play a lot of otome games because they have these big, grandiose stories, and the attractive men are a bonus. I remember liking Color X Malice particularly because of the mystery elements alongside the romance. I'd like to see more girl kissing in these types of stories though. The queerest game I've personally played with a big story like this is probably Dramatical Murder, which has its own problems that I won't go into here because those problems squeak me out. Basically, I want a big story with some gay characters and no weird and gross stuff. Apparently the Dragon Age games have some gay stuff, but I haven't actually played those. Maybe I should. In conclusion, I need more gay shit. Be a girl. Kiss a girl who consents. Maybe go on a date first. I don't know. I'm not your dad. Anyway, thank you for watching. And subscribing. And going onto my streams. I appreciate y'all.